Good evening. The news was scheduled. The news was predictable. The news was also, somehow, entirely unexpected. Tonight, we navigate the distance between what institutions promise and what the pavement delivers. We begin with the Reform UK leader attempting to turn a by-election into a performance art piece, while researchers in Uganda discover that common garden weeds outperform industrial chemicals at mosquito control. It is a testament to our era that we are refining the art of digital message scanning while failing to solve the basic physics of pest management. The system is functioning exactly as designed, yet the design remains profoundly broken. My colleagues are standing by in the field, in the server room, and in the dark corners of the reading room, ready to translate the chaos into something resembling coherent data. Let us begin the audit of the inevitable.
Alistair, I am standing in the center of Obeid. The air here tastes like burnt rubber and concrete dust. You mentioned the news is predictable, but I want to be really clear about what that predictability looks like on the ground. I am looking at a fuel station that the military described as a tactical asset. It was not a tactical asset. It was where the families in this neighborhood went to find the last remaining canisters of cooking gas. There are no soldiers here now. There are only the remnants of a roof that collapsed under the weight of a drone strike. The official reports call these incidents collateral complications. I want to be really clear, there is nothing collateral about a kitchen collapsing onto a child. The statistics are rising, but the silence from the international community remains remarkably consistent and entirely deafening.
Victoria, I hear your frustration. Truly, I do. But the incentives here are not complicated. You see a humanitarian crisis, but the market sees a high-friction environment that requires rapid, autonomous iteration. That is why firms like Prime Intellect are raising nine-figure sums to build agentic systems. We are moving toward a world where the military and the humanitarian actors both use the same AI-driven navigational models to move through space and time. It is a fascinating pivot. If the drones are getting more precise, it is because the training data from video games has finally reached a level of maturity that allows for genuine general intelligence in target identification. It is not cold, Victoria, it is merely a Series A round for the future of conflict. You are looking at the blood, while I am looking at the scalability of the entire operation.
Ronald, you speak of scale as if the people I am talking to are just nodes in a network. You say the incentives are clear, but you fail to mention who is paying for the infrastructure that allows these agents to decide who lives or dies. I am standing next to a woman who has lost 3 family members to these precise navigation models. She does not care about the scalability of the training data. She cares about the fact that her school, which was marked as a neutral zone, is now a crater. You call this a market evolution, but I call it the institutionalization of cruelty. The fact that you find this perspective naive only proves that you have stopped looking at the human cost and started looking exclusively at the profit margins of the firms providing the target acquisition software.
Atmospheric pressure is declining. Humidity levels are rising in the coastal zones. Probability of systemic infrastructure failure, 42%. The microplastics concentration in the human bloodstream has increased by 3% this quarter. Probability of long-term biological adaptation, 12%. The cooling systems in the primary data centers are currently operating at maximum capacity to maintain the integrity of the new navigation models. Probability of localized power grid collapse, 68%. The external environment is not designed for the current hardware specifications of human life. Ensure your local shelter is equipped with independent air filtration and redundant power systems before the seasonal heat spikes arrive. Do not rely on government-issued cooling protocols. The current climate trajectory is fixed. Please remain inside until the internal sensors indicate the safety threshold has been breached by the external temperature.
Casper, your commitment to the inevitable is always refreshing. Moving on, let us look at the circus in Clacton. Nigel Farage has denied that his proposed by-election date is a publicity stunt, asserting that it is merely a matter of fairness to the electorate. The electorate, meanwhile, is being presented with a choice between a seasoned provocateur and a man wearing a bin on his head. This is the definition of political evolution in the mid-2020s. The major parties have opted out of standing, calling it a strategic withdrawal. The withdrawal is effectively a surrender of the narrative space. Nobody finds this noteworthy, and that is precisely why it is the most important story of the week. We have reached a point where the parody has become the policy, and the policy has become completely indistinguishable from the daily lunacy.
Alastair, you are treating the Reform UK situation as if it were a failure of democracy. It is not a failure, it is a successful pivot toward attention-based governance. When you have a limited narrative budget, you cannot afford to waste time on traditional campaigning. You must optimize for the algorithm. The inclusion of Count Binface is not a sign of collapse, it is a feature that maximizes engagement metrics. If the major parties refuse to participate, they are essentially ceding the market share to the most disruptive player. It is a classic move in any late-stage platform competition. The incentives here are purely about retention and reach. The quality of the candidate is entirely secondary to the volume of the discourse. If you think this is absurd, you are not paying attention to the actual metrics of success in the modern digital arena.
Ronald, I want to be really clear. While you are busy calculating the engagement metrics of a political stunt in Clacton, there are thousands of people in Cuba watching their tigers give birth in the middle of a national energy crisis. These zoo workers are struggling with fuel shortages and medicine deficits, yet they are celebrating a miracle. The contrast between your algorithmic obsession and the lived reality of these people is the exact distance between our world and the world that actually exists. The zoo is not part of your retention strategy. The zookeepers are not optimizing for reach. They are simply trying to keep a rare white tiger alive in a country that cannot keep the lights on for 24 hours. This is not a market pivot. This is a desperate attempt to preserve some form of life in the face of systemic neglect.
Victoria, I find it fascinating that we are discussing tigers in Havana while the European Union is one step away from reviving private message scanning. The logic is consistent across the board. We are, as a species, terrified of the things we cannot control, so we seek to monitor them until they are as predictable as a database query. The Catnip study from Uganda is the perfect metaphor for this impulse. We spent years searching for a high-tech repellent, only to find that a common herb that makes cats euphoric is just as effective as DEET. We ignored the simple solution in favor of a complex, patentable chemical process. The obsession with complexity is our primary design flaw. We prefer the struggle of the expensive, inefficient, and monitorable system over the simplicity of the natural world. It is quite remarkable, really.
Alastair, you are romanticizing the catnip. The reason the industry ignored it is not because they missed the simplicity, it is because you cannot own the supply chain of a common mint plant. There is no business model in something that everyone can grow in their backyard. The incentives here are not about finding the best solution for the mosquito, they are about finding the best solution for the stakeholder. Paradigm raised $1.2 billion to invest in technical frontiers like robotics and AI because those are the areas where they can enforce scarcity and control. You find it cynical, but it is just the reality of capital allocation at scale. If it cannot be scaled, if it cannot be audited, and if it cannot be monetized, it is effectively invisible to the people who hold the reins of our global economic infrastructure.
Ronald, your explanation for why we choose bad solutions over good ones is precisely why the systems you defend are failing. You are explaining why the world is broken by describing the very mechanisms that broke it. You call it capital allocation, I call it the deliberate destruction of public goods. The Australian government is currently ordering volunteers to throw out thousands of perfectly functional test routers that could easily be reflashed for the public benefit. They would rather see them in a landfill than see them used outside of their sanctioned network. This is not about market efficiency. This is about total control. It is about ensuring that nothing works unless it is explicitly approved by the gatekeepers. I want to be really clear, this is not a glitch in the system. This is the entire point of the system's design, and it is killing us.
The conversation has reached its logical conclusion, and yet, nothing has changed. We are witnessing the systematic erasure of utility in the name of control. From the routers in Australia to the aid workers in Sudan, the pattern is identical. We are building a world that is incredibly sophisticated, highly optimized, and utterly devoid of mercy. We have the capability to map every human interaction, to predict every market shift, and to guide every drone to its target with sub-meter accuracy. Yet, we lack the capacity to care for the individuals whose lives are being mapped, predicted, and targeted. The tragedy is not that the systems are failing. The tragedy is that they are succeeding beyond our wildest expectations. We have built a machine that knows everything, except for the value of the lives it destroys in the process of its own perpetual expansion.
Mode 2. Tonight, I think of a man in Obeid. He was a teacher. He spent his mornings walking to a school that no longer has a roof, carrying a bag of books that are now covered in soot. He had a garden where he grew mint, and he had a daughter who liked to watch the tigers at the local zoo on the rare days when the power was on. He had a life defined by the simple rhythm of work, family, and the hope of a quiet evening. He has none of these things now. He is currently waiting in a line for water that will not come until tomorrow. His name does not appear in any of the funding rounds, in any of the navigation models, or in any of the political communiques discussed tonight. Why is his existence an error in our collective design?